Right. Hello. Good evening from where we are now doing this recording. So we are some of the veteran tutors with ARC training, and we're just here tonight to talk about some of our best study habits, how we prepare for classes, and how we get through some really difficult times. And so just to introduce everybody here, I know everybody's screen looks a little different. So we have Miss Lauren Mims and Helen Montague and Chase Mays, Christopher McClintock, Christoph Smith, Emily Wise, and I'm Brianne Kendall. So we'll start off with Chase is going to show us just a little bit of how the team's setup works for ARC tutoring and how you can find a tutor at a certain time and how you can join a certain meeting.
Awesome. So I'm quickly going to walk you guys how to get to the ARC tutoring page. If you go into your Teams section on Microsoft Teams, you should have a tab for ARC tutoring. Click on that. And if you look at the top navigation bar, you should have a selection for ARC tutoring schedule. Once you click on that, you will be able to see the tutors available for every day of the week and their subject and time. I'm going to go over to Wednesday because that's what day it is when we're recording. And I need a psychology tutor. So from 7 to 9, Helen is tutoring psychology. From then, I'm going to go down to the psychology fall channel under ARC tutoring. And then I have an option. So I can either see the active meeting and click to join, or I can scroll over and hover over Helen's icon picture, and I can email her directly from Teams. So let's join and see what Helen's up.
Awesome. Thank you, Chase. Thank you. So now we're going to just go through some questions we have prepared about studying, preparing for classes, and we'll each give you a little taste of how we specifically deal with that in our time and in our majors and whatnot. So starting with our first question, what, if any, academic setbacks have you experienced, and what strategies did you use to overcome them?
So I am a biology major, and part of being a biology major is you have to take chemistry classes. So I took the very first intro to chemistry class, which is just general chemistry, and I made a C. So I did not do very well with time management and, just getting all my assignments, doing them the best that I could. However, despite having a bad grade in my chemistry class, I'm still able to get into grad school. I have still been able to get jobs. It hasn't really affected me in a really, really big way. So while grades are important, they are not vital to your success in life.
Thank you, Helen. So for our next question, we said, how do you make time to study?
Yeah, so when I first got to BSC, I was on the swim and dive team. So I had about 4 hours of practice a day. So I had to find a good way to schedule out my time to make sure I stayed on top of my classes. And the best way I found to do that was just schedule out hours where I worked on one subject in one class in particular. I found the best way to do that was during the day in between classes, because I knew at night when I'd be tired and wanted to hang out with people, I wouldn't feel motivated. So I just, woke up at a specific time each day. And from that point on, I tried to study in and out of the library after classes, and I found that really worked well for me.
Awesome. So I'm going to take this next question, which is, what are the best ways you found to take notes and review them? And I will say that everybody's note-taking system is a little different, and you have to find the way that works exactly for you. Some people prefer to take notes on their laptop. I have found that I have greater mind connection when I physically write out the notes, and there is a lot of research that shows that if you handwrite your notes, you'll retain a lot more. So it's always a good thing to use handwritten notes at some point during your study method. I will say for me, my favorite form of taking notes is actually on a blank piece of paper, just a printer piece of paper. And before every test, I will rewrite the notes that I take in class, which are often scribbled and really sloppy. And when I rewrite the notes, I don't just write them verbatim. I try to make mind maps, or I try to write down a word and create a new definition without looking at the definition that I wrote down in class. And for me, there's something about having the blank page that really frees up the space, and I don't feel as cluttered when I look at my notes later. All right, our next question is, how do you digest really complicated texts or textbooks?
Okay, so I'm going to take this one. I'm a chemistry major, so I get to read a lot of fun things in textbooks, which usually involves like a lot more than just words and things like that. So I would say like the biggest way I try to tackle it is, first of all, like making sure I'm doing it at a time that I like have a lot of focus to give. So like late at night when I'm really tired, it's going to go one in ear and out the other. So like waking up early, or like Chase said, like scheduling out time during the day, I think can be more productive. And then taking it little pieces at a time. Like I often like write in a lot of my textbooks. I'll like keep them, especially if it's like within my major, and make notes and then draw arrows or things to like things that make sense in my mind, because I'm a very conceptual learner. So if I can kind of map out like the pictures and things that go with those words that are sometimes like big chunks of just like straight facts and knowledge or like equations, I find it easier to kind of annotate and take it bit by bit. So everyone's different, every textbook is different, but I found that helps in some of my other classes as well. So yeah.
Thank you. All right. So this next question is, how do you study for your really difficult classes?
I will be taking that one. So I've taken a lot of chemistry and biology classes, and I didn't find out what works best for me till my junior year last year. So what helps me the most is between every class, like even before exams, just talking through with somebody in the class, talking through that material that you're supposed to learn for that class. And then when I'm studying for the exam or quizzes, I really like the whiteboards on the second floor of Norton. I really liked writing stuff out on there, drawing out my diagrams, and that really helped me make sure that I understood what I was doing. And I also did a lot of that with Brianne Kendall. And just having somebody else there too to like talk through it and like explain it to somebody else really helped me make sure that I knew the material.
Absolutely, thank you. All right, so we're each going to kind of popcorn on this next question, which is, when it comes to studying, what works best for you? What are your best habits?
I can start on this one. I know for me, I need a quiet place, either a room by myself or getting a study room. And studying for me, I need repetition, whether it's going through flashcards numerous times or writing it out over and over and quizzing myself, or just writing it on a chalkboard. Repetition works well for me. Quiet place, putting in headphones and listening to white noises, just something to where I can really zone in.
I can go ahead and go next. For me, I think the most important part of studying is knowing what you don't know. So if your teacher is great and gives you like old exams or a study guide, make sure you dedicate a lot of time to that, because often that will give you a lot of good ideas of what's going to be on the test. And then you can go through, and if you had anything on there you really struggled with, you can study that area specifically. But if your teacher doesn't give you a study guide or past test, what you can do is something I call the info dump, where pretty much you just sort of take all the information you think like you learned in that section and you write it down, and then you find gaps in your knowledge or errors in what you wrote down, and you go back and review those materials. That way you're not spending hours studying material you already know and sort of wasting your time. You're now using your time much more productively on things you might have been weaker on.
And I can go next. One thing that I found really helpful is I like to teach my teachers. So I like to meet with my professor before like an exam or a quiz or something, and I like to explain the material to them. That way, if I do get something wrong, I have an experienced person to be like, oh, actually, it's this, not that.
Yeah, one thing for me is repetition, repetition, repetition. I almost always write out my notes multiple times before a big exam. I'll have them written out from class, type them up, and then rewrite them out. Just really helps me digest the concepts and make sure I actually understand what we're talking about and not just memorizing definitions.
I can go. So I know different people kind of touched on this, but I like to start really like broad and then kind of narrow down. So like maybe starting out rewriting my notes and just looking at like everything as a whole. And then Christoph kind of said like honing in on like the specific things that I know I'm struggling with. And for me, like chemistry ends up being a lot of math. So like working problems over and over again until I'm like very comfortable with the process. And then, like I said earlier, I'm very conceptual. So if there's something I'm like doing a math problem for or like working out something, knowing like what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So if that means like drawing a picture, and I know that sounds kind of weird, but like ways that you can relate it, drawing a graph, like arrows, pointing things, like any type of picture that would help me connect it and whatever's going to click in my head to have it on a piece of paper to look at like before I'm going into the test or things like that. It really helps me. So yeah.
I think
You got it, Emily.
okay, thank you. I think it's also really helpful to make sure you understand the material as you're learning it, so you're not overwhelmed when you're studying for the test, being like, oh no, I have no idea what this is. And like other people, I start my studying by myself, writing my notes out, reading my notes. And then, like I said earlier, I like to study with people and talk it through with other people. And that really has helped me a lot.
Yeah. And I'll just finish that off by kind of combining something that Helen and Christoph said. So your teachers that do make study guides or that they do hand out old tests, they don't do that to scare you. They do that to guide you as you prepare for the exam. And so don't do the study guide the night before. I normally try to do it the weekend before when I have extra time. And then like Helen said, after I find out what I don't know, then I go to my teachers. And I say, okay, I have this gap in my knowledge. Can you help me fill it? And we can work through specific examples. And that's what a teacher, I would say, prefers when you come to their office with specific questions rather than, I don't understand this concept as a whole. So when you spend that weekend before, or at least a couple of days before, kind of like Christoph said, making this mind dump of everything you do know about the subject, you can pinpoint what you don't know. And then that's when you go to the teacher for help. Thanks everybody for your input. So our next question is, have you ever reached out to a professor for help? And if so, what was that experience like for you and how did it help you?
All right, I'll be covering that. In the physics department, it's really easy to get hung up on wrong ideas or to misunderstand something that's going on. So going to the professors is really useful. It's also really important to understand the professors know the material better than you, and they know what they want for your answers and what they want you to put down. So go to them. They're your best resource for just getting exactly what they want. Email them, reach out to them, ask them any questions you have. They're paid to do this. That's why they have office hours. This is their job. They're here to help you out. So don't be afraid to go to them. I know for me, like when I had a lot of my physics classes, I would be out in front of the professor's offices all day, sort of working on problems. And I really got hung up. I would just go in there, ask them questions. Dr. Pontius and Dr. Rubright have whiteboards in their office so we can just work out the questions with them. And they are very patient. They'll try and help us through it and make sure that not only that we get the right answer, but that we understand where the answer comes from. And a lot of times professors are very good at giving different perspectives on a question or on an issue, and that you might get a better understanding than if you think that the way you did it was right or just some sort of vagueness. So I think it's a really good idea to go to them. They're the best resource you have on campus.
Yeah, absolutely. So next we have, how do you handle the stress of midterms and finals?
I think that one was me. And Emily kind of touched on this earlier, but I would say like being prepared throughout the semester, whatever that looks like, really helps when you get to like that midterm or that final, that you're anticipating like all this content being on it, but the little bit that you've studied for each exam, or even just like rewriting your notes at the end of every week, I think that's been really helpful for me, just because you know, all the assignments and other papers or projects might hit at the same time you're having a lot of exams. So having like a foundational layer and then just adding other studying or other like watching videos, doing problems, anything else like that helps you. But as far as like stress in another sense, I would say just like making sure you're taking care of yourself. Like I said, the more you prepare on the front end, the more, you know, getting 8 hours of sleep or whatever works for you and whatever like looks best for you. I always try to prioritize that for myself, because I know if like I'm not in my best mental state, I'm not going to be able to study well, and I'm not going to show up like as bright and bushy as ever for my exam. So yeah, I think that's all I got.
Can I add something to that? I really rely on my planner when it comes to that time of the year, those times of the year. And so like I plan out pretty intensely my schedule for studying, but I also make sure I include study breaks and like dinner with friends to make sure that I'm not just burning myself out on academics, which I think is very important, at least to me.
Yeah, I think going off of that as well too, you can overstudy for things, and you can exhaust yourself to a point to where you're not going to do any better. You know, if you keep studying, you're really just making yourself more tired. So like Emily said, making time for yourself during midterms and finals, petting the dogs when they come on campus, you know, like that's an important aspect of my midterm experience. Does anybody else have anything on that point?
I was just going to add that for me, it's at the very beginning of the semester when I get, I guess, all my syllabi. Kind of like Emily said, take your planner, whether it's paper or my iPhone calendar. I put all my exam dates, all my assignment dates in my calendar, and I'll look at it week by week. That way I'm on top of things, and that way things don't sneak up on me. And that way maybe it's a Sunday and I know I have this big assignment coming up on Wednesday or Thursday, and I need to be working on this versus hanging out with people. So just really staying organized is how I handle my stress, because if I'm not organized, it kind of falls apart.
Yeah, thank you. All right, and our final question of the night is, have you ever utilized the ARC, which is the tutoring center that we're a part of, a writing center, or the math lab? And if so, how did that help you? So I'm starting off that question because I know that there's a couple of us in tutoring who not only tutor for ARC, but we also tutor either in the math lab, or we also work extra hours in the writing center. So if you go to all 3 places or even 2 places, you'll probably see multiple of us there. As somebody who also works in the math lab, I will say that I personally have never been to the math lab for help. And I think a lot of that came from I relied on other friends who went to the math lab for help. And this is my 6th math class, and you know, I should have gone to the math lab at some point. And now that I work in the math lab and I see students come in, I can see where I would have struggled less in my class had I gone to the math lab. And I think part of why I never went, which is interesting because I am a tutor, part of why I never went was that I was worried I wasn't going to do well in the math lab, or I wasn't going to show up, or I was going to look really dumb or confused. And now that I am a tutor, I totally understand that we are here to help you through any sort of problem that you have. And there's no dumb question. There's nothing that we can't try to work through together. And so if you haven't been to the ARC or the Writing Center or the Math Lab, and it's purely out of feeling like you're not equipped for it, then just go. You know, we're here to help. We want you to succeed. And if we can't help you, we will get you to the person who can help you. So I would always show up when you have questions, because it's just, there's nothing worse than just continually being confused about something. So if you need help, always come.
I took Calculus 101 my freshman year, which is like a basic level class, but I went to the math lab every single week because I just had not done calculus before and it was new to me. And I went every single week, and like I would not have made an A in that class if I had not gone to have like one-on-one help, because I just sometimes need that one-on-one instruction. And so people can tell me in a way that I understand best. And so I definitely recommend it. It was very, very helpful. And also coming from students, they've been through it before. And so that's really nice too, to have the student perspective of it rather than a professor who is very smart and sometimes has trouble dumbing it down.
I would also add, I came in freshman year, like pretty sure I was going to be a chemistry major. So I made it like a priority to reach out to someone who was like a senior or junior that like worked in the ARC Center, and she was really accustomed with all the classes I was going to have to take. And so I felt like starting off like in that very first class I ever took, it was really helpful to kind of get the perspective of someone who'd been in that major. So even if you're not really struggling, you're just like, I'm not 100% sure I get this, or I want someone to like listen to me talk through a concept, like we're all happy to do that. I know if you find someone that you like jive with really well as a tutor, like email that person, and I'm sure they're happy to like spend 20 minutes like talking through your assignment if you are feeling like you need that. And no one here is scary or mean. I think all these people are great, so we're always happy to help. I think in any way, even if it's like something that feels so small, like there's no judgment, I promise. Yeah, that's my little spiel.
Absolutely. Does anybody else have any final wrap-up tidbits?
Well, great. I think one more time before we go, I'm going to show you guys again how to access the ARC tutoring channel on Teams. So if you go on Teams on the left sidebar, you can access all of the teams that you are in. I'll go out so you can see the full view. So these are all of my teams. In the panel, click the ARC tutoring box, and it'll take you to the general. From here, you can look at the top to go to the ARC tutoring schedule, where you can find the schedule of all the tutors, as I was explaining before. We're going to scroll over to Wednesday again to find who is tutoring and who can help you today. Now, this is for the drop-in schedule, but that doesn't mean if you need help at a different time that's not on the schedule, don't hesitate to reach out to anyone that's on this list. I'm sure they'd be happy to help you at different hours as well. So once again, we need psychology help with Helen. So we are going to see that she's tutoring from 7 to 9 and go over to this channel. And once again, we can see that we can either join the meeting that is going on right now or hover over her profile to either send her a message on there or contact her email. And I think that wraps it up for today. Thank you guys for listening, and hope that helped with study tips and that you all have a successful semester. And we hope to see you in ARC tutoring soon.